study and improvement project. So I'm going to go through and just introduce you. Actually, I'll let each of the members on the screen introduce themselves. This is part of our design team. Dan, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm Dan McGinnis from McMahon Associates. We're the municipality's traffic engineering consultant for this project.
Tejal? You're muted.
There you go. I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Tejal Patel. Good evening. I am with T&M Associates, and we have been hired by Princeton for the master planning as well as the construction support for Witherspoon Street, the southern section between Nassau as well as Green Street.
Ian?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Baker. I work in the engineering department for Princeton, and I am the construction engineer.
Kyle?
Hi, Kyle Humphreys with T&M Associates. I'll be working for the city doing stormwater planning for the improvements.
Taylor?
Taylor Saputer, municipal arborist with Princeton in our Department of Public Works, as well as a licensed New Jersey tree expert.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I'm Robert Hunter. I am operations manager for T&M Associates, and my function will be making sure that Kyle and Tejal and the municipality get all the support they need from T&M Associates.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Smith. I'm one of the inspectors for Princeton Engineering.
Thank you. And I failed to introduce myself as well. I'm Deanna Stockton. I'm the municipal engineer in Princeton. And I'm very excited to start this next phase of our work with some real concrete alternatives and some design features that are responsive to the comments that we received from our first meeting. So I'm going to jump in here and share my screen. And we've got a presentation, and I'm at the beginning or at the end. Let me restart this. Okay. Coming back to the meeting, let me share my screen now. Bear with me. Okay, here we are. So we're excited to show this to you. Now, if I can get my screen to work. What we'd like to do with this meeting is go through the slideshow and then answer questions or hear feedback after the presentation. We do have Claudia Ceballos on the call as well. If there is a need for Spanish translation, she can assist with that. When we do have you bring in the comments, please, if you can, introduce yourself, give us your address, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. You can provide written comments to us at engineering@princetonnj.gov. And then there is a survey that is already posted on the municipal website for the Witherspoon Street project, and we've included it at the end of this survey as well as here, so that you can rank the different alternatives that we will present tonight. So going through the schedule, tonight is our second public meeting for the Witherspoon Street project. We launched public involvement back in February of 2020, and who would have thought that all of this upheaval would have occurred over the last 6 months. So we're fortunate that everybody is healthy and safe, and we're able to move on and look to the future of Witherspoon Street. We're looking to then also have a third public meeting in October on Witherspoon Street, then move into a Historic Preservation Commission presentation in November, so that we can really wrap up what the final layout and concept for Witherspoon Street from Nassau Street to Green Street will be. The goal is to put the construction project out to bid in April 2020 so that we can start construction in June 2021. Sorry, and that was advertised for bids in April 2021. We've split off a separate project for sanitary sewer improvements. As part of our initial design work, we did a TV investigation of the sanitary sewers, and we found that there is work that's needed. And so one of the things we're going to do is separate that as a separate project. And we're looking to do the construction in January, beginning in January 2021. And again, this is for the same section from Nassau to Green Street. And then moving on with the road, sanitary, and storm improvements, we are seeking a state DOT grant for additional funding for a section from Green Street to Franklin. And so again, we're looking to put that project together for construction in 2022 to 2023. At the same time as the municipality is doing our work, the State Highway Department of Transportation is also looking at improvements to the intersection of Witherspoon and Nassau Street. There's been a request for ADA upgrades to the traffic signals, and the infrastructure that's in place does not have the capability to accept the new equipment. And so DOT has hired a consultant to execute a concept development study and then move into final design. So we will provide you with a little bit of information on where DOT is at and what some of their alternatives are as well tonight. So included on the next two slides are quite a bit of words, quite a bit of information about the feedback we received at the first community meeting. I'm not going to go too much into detail in these items. Overall, there was a feeling that we needed to look to accommodate more than just vehicular traffic in the Witherspoon Street corridor, and also address drainage issues that have started to occur, and look at what is a complete street. What is a complete Witherspoon Street going forward in this century? So here are just some of the comments that we've received. Again, more comments. The way we had the February meeting, we had sheets available with each of these topics, for example, safety, wayfinding, and people were able to write down their comments. So this listing is an overview of the comments that we received. And it's been our touch point as we look ahead to how can we improve Witherspoon Street. So with that, one area that we're looking at is pedestrian facility improvements. That was something we noticed. Existing sidewalks on Witherspoon Street are about 9 feet in the area from Nassau to Paul Robeson. And that area is shared with pedestrians, with street tree wells, with bike racks, with newspaper boxes. And so it really is not a very pedestrian friendly area. It's hard to pass when you have somebody pushing a stroller and another person going in an opposite direction. So we're looking at opportunities to widen the sidewalks. We're looking at opportunities to provide additional safe crossing areas for people visiting Witherspoon Street. We've noticed that there's a lot of people that cross at Whole Fish on the southern leg of the intersection, which does not have a crosswalk. So we're looking to consider adding a crosswalk in that location. Another opportunity to consider as we move forward are curb extensions. The image on the right side of the slide gives an example of curb extensions. What it is you actually are widening the sidewalk and it creates a pocket that protects the parked vehicles, but it also serves to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians. And it gives an opportunity so that the pedestrians are more visible to cars that are turning in the intersection. We'll be looking to replace the brick crosswalks with the white Continental crosswalks. Public Works over the winter had removed a few of the brick crosswalks in the downtown area, and we will continue that work and along this stretch of the roadway. So other options to provide extra safety, extra area for pedestrians are obviously to look at our traffic signals and where can we prioritize pedestrians. The traffic signal at Nassau, Washington, Van Divender has an exclusive pedestrian phase, which means all vehicles stop and pedestrians have the right of way to make all movements in the intersection. So that is one option that we're looking at for the Witherspoon, Paul Robeson, Wiggins intersection. And it's also an idea that DOT is looking at Witherspoon and Nassau. Another idea is to protect the tree wells with tree grates. You'll see that in the picture on the left. This just gives more safe access for pedestrians rather than having the tree wells that may be a tripping hazard, may have stones that get dislodged. It provides a safer area for the pedestrians, but it also gives protection to the tree and helps to prevent compaction of the root area around the tree so it can absorb more water. And then we're looking to improve street lighting and add benches. So those are the pedestrian facility improvement ideas. So I'm gonna next move into the Nassau Street signal improvements, and I'm gonna switch over to Drew McGinnis from McMahon. I'm sorry, Dan McGinnis from McMahon to review this. Just as to preface this, this is information that we just received last week during a meeting with DOT and their consultant. And I apologize for the quality of these pictures, but that was actually using my cell phone to take images off of my computer screen. So with that, I'll give it over to Dan to talk about this.
Thanks, Deanna. So as Deanna mentioned, this is a state project that was initiated by the state, is proceeding separately by their design team and will likely get built later. But of course, since it butts right up against the limits of the municipal project, we'll have to coordinate the two to make sure that they're achieving the same end. And it was conceived as a pedestrian and traffic safety improvement project with an emphasis on pedestrians. So of course, the minimum that they'll have to do is meet the Americans with Disabilities Act and federal signal requirements. So they'll be upgrading the curb ramps. And but by the way, there are two alternatives shown on the screen, but these apply to both. So they'll be upgrading the curb ramps, installing pedestrian push buttons. They'll be installing countdown pedestrian heads, implementing an exclusive pedestrian phase, as Deanna mentioned. That applies to both of these alternatives. But then beyond that, as their consultant did their traffic analysis and projected out to the 20 years that they expect these improvements to last, they want to make sure they last into the future. They found that although things operate pretty well in about 20 years, at the end of that cycle, Witherspoon Street, that approach's traffic starts to operate poorly. So this alternative 2 that they presented would provide separate left and right turn lanes from Witherspoon Street onto Nassau. Now, of course, some of the traffic flow changes that have been contemplated and that we'll discuss in a little bit aren't reflected in these 2 alternatives. But as Deanna mentioned, this is just the sort of initial presentation of the alternatives they've been working on, and whatever alternative is advanced, it'll have to be coordinated with the state to make sure both projects advance together successfully. So you want to advance the slide? Okay, so I'll continue and talk about the signal improvements at Robeson Place. So this, of course, is a municipal signal within the municipal project limits, and so the municipality will be taking care of it within the project. Similarly, we'll have to meet ADA and federal signal standards, so we'll be upgrading the curb ramps, installing accessible push buttons at the countdown ped heads, and then, as Deanna mentioned, we will try to prioritize an exclusive pedestrian phase. But traffic patterns here are different than they are at Nassau. So we'll need to analyze things, and if that can't be accommodated for some reason, as an alternative, we'll evaluate a potential lead pedestrian interval, where pedestrians will still walk concurrently with the adjacent traffic movement, but they'll get that walk symbol earlier, which will provide a few seconds a head start to get into the intersection. And studies have shown that really improves yielding. Once the pedestrian's in the crosswalk, everybody yields to them almost always. So, and then we'll look at whatever timing and phasing improvements, the order of the various movements and the time that each is given. We'll evaluate those and try to balance everything out to balance the need of all users, especially if we start changing or continue to change the traffic flows and other intersections are affected. We'll need to analyze the nearby intersections that are affected.
All right, thank you, Dan. Moving on to ways that we can address the comments that have been received. One area is with the tree canopy. We have old Bradford pear trees that are nearing end of life. And so we are looking to replace those trees and looking at native and shade trees, bringing in a variety of trees so we don't have a monoculture. And I know there has been some desire for the spring flowering trees as well. Taylor, I don't know if you want to say anything about that now, or we can also cover it if there's any questions later.
Sure, we can cover it when there are additional questions. I will just say that all the trees in the limits of this project have been surveyed, assessed by myself, and then a master list has been started on trees with the Shade Tree Commission of Princeton. So we are on top of the native tree list, not only for aesthetics, but also for sustainability as well.
Great. Thank you. And again, not only do cast iron tree grates in the tree wells assist pedestrians, as I mentioned previously, they also are good for the trees. And so that definitely is something we are looking to incorporate.
And I'm sorry, just to add to that, Deanna, the new tree wells now, they can accommodate as the tree grows, where earlier styles, eventually the tree would girdle over the grate, but that's just not the case anymore. So as the tree grows, there's rings that you can cut out that will accommodate the girth of the trunk.
Great, thank you. And another safety feature that we would like to incorporate is replacing the existing street lights with upgraded street lights, but still acknowledging the historic character that is provided by the current street lighting. Again, we'd also like to incorporate, sorry about that, opportunities of adding banners to the street lights, hanging baskets and irrigation for the baskets, and electrical outlets, so we can continue to have the Christmas lights or the holiday lights like we currently have on those street lights. Additional street amenities that we're looking at are upgrading newspaper racks, providing outdoor seating opportunities. And one thing that we've learned through the COVID time is that the outdoor dining and the activity on the street is really making this a destination and a place to be. We've got some public art with the mural provided by the Arts Council. And so we're looking at ways to increase that, but also to extend outdoor dining times. I know there's been some requests of consideration of larger structures or bigger structures that can accommodate heaters to extend the outdoor dining into the colder months. And so that is something that the design team is looking at. Possibly one opportunity is to have shade structures, a sail type structure that extends from the building to a pole that is mounted in the sidewalk. And it's something that can be taken down in the winter, but could be in place during the cooler fall months. Sorry about that. To just extend that outdoor dining time. So that we are looking at that as well in this process. Looking at transit and mobility ideas. Unfortunately, Zagster has pulled out of Princeton during the COVID period, but we are definitely committed to finding micro-mobility options, whether that is Zagster again, whether it's another company that may provide electric bikes, electric scooters. We are looking for those opportunities and definitely want to coordinate with Princeton University on that. And then also looking at the New Jersey Transit and the freebie operations within this corridor as well, and where possible to look at the installation of bus shelters. The bus shelter on the bottom left corner is actually going to be installed very soon, something very similar to that. Public Works is working on that, and within the next few weeks, you will see a bus shelter very similar to that on Nassau Street at Palmer Square. Again, looking at bike facilities as well. Where can we add bike corrals, bike lockers, potentially bike shelters? So those are all on the table for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Kyle now. There have been a lot of changes at the state level with stormwater management, and later this year or early next year, Princeton will be adopting a new stormwater control ordinance. And one of the state requirements in that ordinance is that we use green infrastructure as our first method to manage stormwater runoff. And so we think there are great opportunities within Witherspoon Street to incorporate this into the corridor, as well as show it off and use it to beautify the downtown area, plus address some of the drainage concerns that have been facing us recently. So with that, I'll turn it to Kyle.
Thank you. So in our conceptual idea of how we're going to approach the new rules and provide green infrastructure and traffic calming and a place to park, place to eat, and all that, to come up with kind of coordinated strategy with Princeton and stakeholders like yourselves to come up with this green structure. Couple of the strategies that we're thinking are in those areas that were mentioned previously with the bump outs and the parking protection areas, as you can see kind of in the middle of the screen, are these planter type areas. And what will happen is those will take some of the runoff, provide extra areas for stormwater to collect. It slows it down, it provides water quality, and it provides more drainage detention so that the downstream isn't as affected as if, you know, it's just sheeting off and right into the inlets on the side of the road. So our goal would be to provide more areas of stormwater relief, collect it off the road faster, provide these areas of detention and water quality, and just reduce the amount of runoff that's entering the downstream drainage shed, provide water quality to meet those goals. In addition, you know, we'll work with the Princeton arborists to come up with a tree or planting scheme, you know, throughout the block that meets their goals, as well as provides, you know, maintenance and low cost options for beautification, tree canopy, and you know, an overall greening and cooling down of the space. So, and you know, we want to keep with the standards. So tree wells would absolutely, and tree trenches would absolutely be involved. These would be tied in with the planter areas that you see, and then they would be tied into an improved underground collection system, you know, to bring it up and meet new DEP kind of regulations on how to collect stormwater flow.
Thanks, Kyle.
Deanna,
yes, please.
yeah, before we move forward, I do want to add that we are aware of the ponding issues at the intersection of Hullfish and Witherspoon Street, and we will work to correct this ponding issue that we have. Sometimes it's also called flooding. I saw that in your previous February 2020 neighborhood meeting, there were a lot of concerns about this. Some people called it a swamp. We will make sure that we improve these ponding issues at the intersection of Witherspoon and Hullfish.
Thank you, Tejal. Some of the comments we received requested ADA accessible parking. So we do have very few opportunities on street with designated ADA parking. So that is something that T&M is looking at as we move ahead with the design. We're also looking at maximizing the use of the curb area. So in areas where we have on-street parking and loading zones, there is an opportunity to designate different times of operation for each activity. We're currently trialing this on Palmer Square East near Brooks Brothers, where we have metered parking after loading zone hours, so in the evening time. And that is something that we will be looking at for Witherspoon Street to see if that's an opportunity to add additional parking instead of having loading zones in the evening that aren't being used as much as they could be. So also, again, looking at the parking offsets or curb extensions, curb bump outs at the crosswalks, and finding opportunities for the bike corrals and shelters. Another big portion of the project is to look at the wayfinding opportunities with the change of the on-street parking meters a couple of years ago. This was a piece of that project that has been slower to move ahead. So we would like to continue working on wayfinding signage. The example, oops, sorry about that. The example shown on the screen is from the Nassau Streetscape guidelines. And so we would look to do something similar, but incorporating possibly in times to walk and bike to destinations. So now the meat of the meeting is really to talk about the different alternatives. And while we're looking at 5 different alternatives, there's a lot of text here, so I'm going to jump right into the different alternatives so you can see it more visually as to what the proposals are. So with alternative A, it's essentially taking how the road is laid out between Nassau and Spring Street right now and making that change permanent. So we would be looking to have a one-way northbound operation on Witherspoon Street with 1 lane of parking or loading. And so this is alternative A. A tweak that we are considering, and it will be investigated by McMahon if this is one of the alternatives that we want to move ahead with, is looking at reversing flow on South 2 Lane. Currently, South 2 Lane operates in a northbound one-way operation as well. And so this was actually an idea, I think, that came out of the bike master plan process about 4 or 5 years ago, as a way to make the pedestrian activity on Nassau Street a little bit safer, but was to reverse the flow on South 2 Lane. So what we would be looking at is approximately a 24-foot wide roadway, again, in a one-way direction to Spring Street, and 1 lane of parking. And so moving through the pros and cons, the main, any change that we make at the intersection of Witherspoon Street and Nassau Street will require DOT approval. If we begin to change the geometry of the roadway, but especially the traffic operation, that triggers the need for a traffic study. And so alternative A and any alternative that changes traffic operations from a 2-way operation to a 1-way operation or closing the road will require a traffic study. And so we are working closely with DOT. They are aware, obviously, because they have been giving us these temporary approvals for the current 1-way operation. But long-term, we will have to investigate with the traffic study what the impacts of changing traffic movements on Witherspoon are and what impacts those occur on the state highway system. So I just want to make that very clear, just so everybody's aware. We can't just snap our finger and decide that this is the option we want. We also will have to work closely with the Historic Preservation Commission, because this is a change from the way the road is laid out now, and Witherspoon Street is in a couple of historic districts. So again, they will have an opportunity to weigh in on the layout of our final proposal before we take it to the State Historic Preservation Commission for approval. But with that, making a change to a more, a less car-centric version of Witherspoon Street as shown in Alternative A, we get an opportunity to provide wider sidewalks. So instead of the currently 9-foot wide sidewalks that exist with a two-way operation and 2 lanes of traffic, we could potentially look at about 16 feet of sidewalk on each side. So about 50% of the road would be pedestrian space, 50% of the road would be vehicular space. And what that does is it really gives us an opportunity to look at adding green infrastructure, replacing trees, adding these other amenities like outdoor dining, public art locations, bench areas. Alternative A does require that parking be reduced. So compared to the two-way operation with 2 lanes of traffic, we would be losing 50% of the on-street parking between Nassau and Spring Street. So instead of 22 spaces, we're down to 11. It will also require a permanent rerouting of the New Jersey Transit bus. With the current pilot setup, New Jersey Transit has rerouted the bus. It used to travel from Nassau Street down, or I guess northbound on Witherspoon, and then also southbound towards Nassau Street. They have rerouted, and they would look for a permanent rerouting in this case because they don't want to utilize the road in just a one-way fashion. And as I mentioned with the traffic study, this will relocate traffic movements onto 206 Nassau Street, Paul Robeson, and Van Devender, all of the streets in that area, and that's something we will look at. So that's the next option, is looking at pretty much the same layout, the same northbound operation, but keeping parking lanes on both sides of the road. Again, we'll have to go back to DOT with a traffic study for their approval and work with the Historic Preservation Commission. Instead of 16-foot wide sidewalks, we're looking at, say, 13 feet wide sidewalks. Again, compared against the 9-foot that we currently have, that's a great advantage to add that in. And so again, we do have some space for amenities and green infrastructure. Keeps the parking at 22. We still have the issue with the New Jersey Transit bus and the traffic movements. Another option that is out there is closing Witherspoon Street completely and making it just a pedestrian space, making it available for outdoor dining, seating, bike share stations, bike parking, bike shelters, all sorts of options. But again, this requires a traffic study and DOT approval. We would have to work closely with the Historic Preservation Commission, and all 22 on-street parking spaces and loading zones would be removed. Also, additionally, the access to the South 2-lane parking yard would be affected. So we would have to look at how that parking yard would operate with only access from South 2-lane. And then, sorry about that. Then we, of course, this would impact the delivery vehicle access. And we would have to look at if there's opportunities with the traffic engineer to accommodate deliveries, or if it's a limitation and an impact on delivery access into the Hinds Plaza area. So, so that is a concern with Alternative C. On alternative C, we also have, as shown with the yellow arrow, a thought of potentially reversing the flow of traffic on Spring Street, so that there is still an opportunity to get into downtown utilizing Van Divender or South Tulane. So those are both kind of subsets of a proposal to close Witherspoon Street as part of alternative C. And alternative D is almost what we have as a pre-COVID condition, except it would be removing one parking lane. So we would reduce the paved area of the roadway. We would be able to slightly widen the sidewalks. So instead of about 9 foot of sidewalks, we're looking at 11 feet of sidewalks. And so with this option, we don't have to do a traffic study. It provides the slightly wider sidewalks. It will reduce the on-street parking, and we'll still have to work closely with the Historic Preservation Commission. The last alternative we'll present tonight is to put the road back as it is or was pre-COVID with two-way traffic movements and parking on both sides of the road. So again, looking at this, we'll maintain all of the parking. Sidewalks, will have minimal sidewalk areas to provide amenities. However, as shown in this graphic on this page, we can still look at opportunities with the curb bump outs, the curb extensions, say at Nassau Street, knowing that we would have to coordinate with their concept development study and the potential idea of having 2 southbound lanes at the intersection with Nassau Street. So the curb extension shown here potentially may only be on the Hamilton Jewelers side of the roadway. And then we can also look at opportunities at Spring Street with the curb extensions to really narrow those crossing areas, to highlight the pedestrians so that they're not hidden by parked cars, and to add in some green infrastructure as shown with the green shading. So this still provides some opportunities, but it's a lot less. This is definitely a more car-centric option. In this case, I think it's about 30% of the right-of-way would be pedestrian use. The remainder is roadway use. So all of these concepts are already included on a presentation that we have on the municipal website. But we would also love for you to go into our SurveyMonkey survey tonight. If you have a preference already thought about for these alternatives, and weigh in for us. When we checked it this morning, we already had 101 responses to our survey. And at this point, or as of this morning, the overwhelming preference was to close Witherspoon Street from Nassau to Spring Street to motor vehicles. The second most popular option would be the scenario that we have on the ground right now with the one-way northbound traffic and 1 parking or loading lane, followed by one-way northbound with 2 parking and loading lanes. And as you can see, the pre-COVID 2 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes of parking was the least desirable as of this morning. So we do encourage everybody to go to this link and participate in the survey. what we will do is next week we will look at the survey results, and we'll also obviously take into account all of the feedback that we received tonight and in follow-up emails, and work with McMahon to identify what the top 3 preferred alternatives are. And we'll work with McMahon to create a scope of work for a traffic study. If the preferred alternatives require a traffic study, and the idea would be to take that to Princeton Council at the end of the month or beginning of October, most likely the end of the month, so that McMahon can get started on that traffic study. So people will have an opportunity to hear more of the discussion at that point, at that council meeting. There will be an opportunity to participate at the historic preservation meeting as well, where T&M is going to have a more developed concept based on the alternative. And if there's an overwhelming alternative that comes out of tonight's meeting and our 3rd meeting next month, that most likely is what will go as part of their concept to historic preservation. So there will be multiple opportunities for the public to keep track of how this project is progressing. But right now, I'm going to just stop talking. I thank you for bearing with me on this, and we can definitely start to address the comments that have been coming in and to answer questions. So I think that the process, as you heard us talk at the beginning, is you can raise your hand virtually, and Claudia and Jill can admit you to speak. So Claudia, I think I'm going to help you ask you to help me moderate that piece of it. I do see that the mayor has also joined us. Mayor, would you like to say anything as well at this point?
Yeah, hi. Hopefully people can hear me. Thanks everybody for joining, and thank you, Deanna, for that really comprehensive presentation. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really to hear from the community and hear what's most important. I think you heard with the way Deanna laid things out that each option comes with pros and cons, and unfortunately we can't fit every single thing that we want on the street. So I think we need to be mindful, and I hope we can listen to each other too. I know in hearing from some of the businesses along that street, we want to make sure we have a setup that is going to work for them, and pay attention to all of the needs that everybody using that stretch of road requires to make it work. But I think this is a really exciting project, and it's exciting to sort of think through what the different alternatives are and what that might mean. And one of the benefits, I think, if there's any benefits from having gone through this pandemic, is it's given us the opportunity to have a pilot in a sense, and to see what one of these designs looks like. So I think as a community, we have that shared experience that will hopefully inform our discussion tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to scan through the Q&A before we address the people with the hands up in the participant pool. Let's see, we have one comment about, so glad to see the town embracing public art and its future design. Let's see, another comment is, the only drawback of a traffic study seems to be time. Preserving the planet must be a priority. If we have no planet and the climate crisis destroys our world, historic preservation isn't going to be maintained. The West Coast is burning. Some cities now have the worst air quality in the world. COVID offered us the opportunity to do something that could never have moved this quickly. Let's choose option C. Got a great presentation. Thank you, David. Moving through these, I don't want to miss anybody. Okay, sorry about that. Would it be possible to have a hybrid option C where temporary access is allowed for delivery vehicles during early morning hours? If that is the case, I would be foreclosing to motor vehicles. So Dan, put that on your list to respond to. Can you comment on the service loading implications of option C? I prefer this option, but don't know how businesses could meet their basic functional requirements. Another option C. One pro that remains unlisted is creating a vibrant downtown commercial district with greater pedestrian foot traffic that would enliven the city center and celebrate Princeton's identity. For examples of this, please see pedestrian malls and downtown business districts in Burlington, Vermont, Boulder, Colorado, Denver, Colorado, many others. Thank you. This is good for business safety and our community. Read the 20-year traffic projection. How much of an annual reduction in motor vehicles is assumed? I don't know the answer to that one, but we can look into that. I think they were actually, I won't, Dan, you may remember if they talked about that in the meeting, so I'm not going to try to answer it. When do you find wayfinding signs? There should be one to direct people to the library. How have you been faring in faring in regards to some of the stronger storms we've had in comparison to similar downtowns? Victoria, we may need to follow up on that question with you. What about bicycle traffic on Wiggins, Robeson? How will bike lanes affect the signal design? And can work on that one as well. So I think I've gone through all, oh, no, a few more here. A few more have popped up. Let's see, and I do want to open this up for other people. How do you get to the survey? I can give you the link on that again. Jamie, just a minute. So it's on SurveyMonkey. If you want to go directly to SurveyMonkey. Sorry, I'm fighting with my computer right now. It is available at www.surveymonkey.com/R as in Robert /Witherspoon concept survey. That is the link, but we also have it on the municipal website, and I can flash that screen up again at the end. So with that, let's see, back to the comments on option C. Can we close the street but make exception for delivery vehicles and handicap access? I feel there needs to be handicap parking only so that people who need it can park close to restaurants and stores. These exceptions are given by a lot of city cores that are closed to cars. Would there be a better way? Oh my goodness, I can't keep up with everybody. Would there be a better way to keep the pandemic set up one way, but close the road after 6 p.m., dinner time for all pedestrian? That is an option. That is a hybrid that could be considered and could be factored into alternatives. Let's see, next question. Could you please elaborate on the time frame if a traffic study is required? Dan, I'll give that one to you to follow up with. I'm very happy about this project and increasing access for cyclists and pedestrians. I like the idea of closing the road completely to vehicles if a solution can be found to deal with deliveries. Thanks for the forward-looking design. Does the business community think that this is good for business? We definitely want to hear the answer to that one. And I hope, I see that we do have some participants from the business community here tonight. So please raise your hand. Thank you. I saw that. Let's see. Great ideas. Congrats. Is there any chance to preserve the wonderful big trees? That'll be a Taylor question. Oh, thank you, Victoria. Asking about stormwater management. How have we been faring in comparison to other downtowns that are experiencing the same storms, rainfall levels? I will try to answer that one. When will the northern section of Witherspoon Street be studied? So the idea with the schedule is, unfortunately, we have some deadlines that are established by the State Department of Transportation because we have municipal aid grant for the project. Last night, council approved a resolution requesting a 6-month extension. Our grant had required us to award a construction contract by March 2021. Council approved a resolution that we will submit to the state asking for a 6-month extension to that. So, T&M has prepared a schedule for us that does aim to have all of the construction documents ready in April for bidding. But if we do have to put in a comprehensive traffic study, it makes a tight time frame. So the 6-month extension definitely gives us a little more wiggle room to work through the traffic study and to work with DOT. So that, I hope, Lisa, answers the question about the time frame. So anyways, and then so with the northern section of Witherspoon Street, the idea would be once we've finished the concept planning for this section, I would like to move with the planning department into the next phase of the concept study, which would be from green to valley. And so we would be looking sometime next year, sometime I would think early spring, to complete that or to begin that planning study. Got another comment. Businesses thrive in the many pedestrian malls in other college towns around the country, and I'm confident that Princeton downtown businesses would be boosted if we closed Witherspoon Street to traffic, as even more customers and students flooded in. Since the COVID setup is in place, would it take less time for the traffic study since it's already implemented? I will give that to you, Dan. Let's see. And then related to the businesses and the opportunities to have a more vibrant downtown, there was a comment of, do we agree that businesses would thrive downtown Princeton with this change? Let's see, then we have, according to the master plan, Witherspoon is a major collector intended to promote free flow of traffic. Do all of these plans meet the master plan? How will you be able to do a traffic plan during the pandemic? Also, what about safety? Access to residents for fire or access to hospital? Will this impact response times? Then we have, is this plan to be year-round or seasonal? This would be any changes that we're implementing to geometrically change the roadway would be year-round, but potentially road closures paired with another alternative could be seasonal. And then also pedestrian only closing Witherspoon to traffic will negatively impact retail businesses. So let me finish with those open comments. I see we also have some things in the chat, but I would really like to turn this over and start hearing directly from our participants. So Claudia, if you can help me and we can start letting people come in and have comments. I don't know if you know who's first in line, but if you can help me with that, that'd be great.
I'm moving them over right now.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so let's start with Laura Grau. If you could unmute yourself, and if you want to turn on your camera, you should be able to give us your comments.
Oh, I did not indicate that I had any comments.
Oh, okay. I thought you had your hand raised.
No, I had my hand raised in the very beginning when I was asking if you guys could see us, because we could all hear you talking about us.
We could not see you, so thank you.
No, I liked everything you had to say. It was terrific, and I really hope we can be much more pedestrian friendly, because I have survived going through all those intersections without being killed by traffic so far. I'd like that to continue.
Great, thank you. All right, Jessica, would you like to go next?
Hi, thank you. I just want to preface this by saying, and I'm the owner of Small World Coffee, in case people don't know. And in the 28 years of being in business, this is my very first time speaking at a council meeting. So this is clearly very important to me. And I'm trying really hard to keep it brief, but because I spend most of my life on Witherspoon Street, probably more than most people on this call, there's no denying that the idea of a pedestrian way is very appealing. Those whom I've spoken to have a positive reaction, and they oftentimes mention that it makes them feel like they're in Europe. It possesses this romantic feeling, you know, the experience that you have on holiday when you're relaxing and enjoying the environment and you're not in a hurry. It also expands our feelings of community and connection. And I love all of these ideas very much. However, we cannot make significant changes to Witherspoon Street based on how it makes us feel. And we cannot pay our rent and our property taxes based on how it makes us feel. You know, Witherspoon Street's a primary artery in downtown Princeton. So I also believe that there's probably more measured designs, even some options that haven't been presented tonight, that would vastly improve the streetscape and the experience. First, I really want to applaud the efforts of the town. Deanna, I know you had a big part to do with this, of making the outdoor dining available during the pandemic, which has been a lifeline to the restaurant community and continues to be, even with the anemic indoor dining opportunities. However, we cannot use what's happening right now in downtown Princeton as a benchmark for how this kind of Witherspoon Street setup would work in Princeton when it's back to normal with its normal traffic levels, when the university, the seminary, Westminster Choir College are all back in session and everyone's back at work, whenever that time may be. And when all the visitors start coming back to town. And the traffic flow in town right now is not normal. If I had to make an educated guess based on my experience, it's probably about 35 to 40% lower than normal. So we're not seeing how a reimagined Witherspoon Street will truly impact traffic and parking at this time. So COVID should not be the benchmark. Pedestrian ways, you know, speaking to Sam, I think Sam Bunting's comment, pedestrian ways are often successful in towns with mixed use, higher density, excellent mass transit, and ample parking. And Princeton may grow into this, but these qualities are still aspirational. The density of Princeton does not currently have the density of population to support this initiative. As much as we love our locals and we rely on you, our businesses cannot thrive with Princeton residents alone. And visitors to our town are essential. Tourism is essential. Speaking to parking and mass transit, every restaurant that's opened in Princeton has to provide proof of parking to get our permit approved. And I think that the town of Princeton needs to be held to the same standard. We cannot take away all of the parking on Witherspoon. We know we're losing the Griggs lot. There's been discussion of eliminating a lot of the parking on Wiggins. We cannot remove this amount of parking without solutions in advance. And sadly, we don't have an excellent mass transit system that's widely used by both visitors to town or the employees that come into town who cannot afford to live in Princeton, as we know. And the weekend business is mostly tourists, and we thrive on the weekend business in this town. And I know they're mostly tourists because when they line up at Small World, they don't know our menu, they don't know how to order their drink. So it's definitely mostly tourists. The last thing I want to say about parking, because I know it's just like, we're all sick of it, but it's a reality. When we did that, when the parking changed in town not too long ago, the council was supposed to address employee parking, and this still hasn't been addressed. So there's these parking issues that are compounding on one another with the new setup, potential new setup. My next point is about spatial optimization and the current underutilization of Witherspoon Street in the morning. Not all businesses are the same when it comes to what is needed. With the current configuration on Witherspoon Street, between the hours of roughly like 7 a.m. and 2 p.m., the vast majority of spaces that are filled with tables right now, and I totally understand why we're doing it right now, and I appreciate why we're doing it right now. The vast majority of those spaces are empty. And the street is quiet in terms of seating and underutilized. So it kind of feels imbalanced in the morning. And to my next point, it's also the time of day when all of the businesses are being serviced, which somebody mentioned in the chat. While I understand the night scene is very lovely right now, but between 6:30 a.m. when we normally open, we're opening at 7 a.m. right now, I witnessed the increased congestion, noise, and traffic from 18-wheelers, a massive amount of delivery trucks, trash pickup, cleaning of grease traps, kind of like the underbelly of what happens in a business district every single morning. And there's oftentimes, and I have it on video, 10 to 12 minute backups of traffic on Witherspoon Street because cars can't get through. So if we close Witherspoon Street to any capacity, we need to, address these essential services in town. The goal of all of this is to make our town as attractive and kick-ass as possible. That's what we want. That's the goal. But I think we must be very careful. Our CBD is very small, and it always will be. We must be thinking about all of these important issues: density, traffic patterns, various kinds of parking, deliveries and services, and the fun things like outdoor spaces and art, public art. I personally think there's other more measured solutions, but I'm open to the discovery process. And this is just such an essential throughway. I'm not a city planner or a traffic consultant. However, I've had my eyes and ears on Witherspoon Street for 28 years, and I have a strong vested interest in it working out. We need a town that attracts diverse retail, diverse residents, lots of visitors, and solutions to import the entire ecosystem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I hope you will follow up with me and share what your ideas are for additional options. I know as we've brainstormed it, even up into the last half hour before the meeting, we were coming up with more options. So we would love to hear your viewpoint as well. And, you know, if you wouldn't mind sharing with me as well, what your preference is between the one-way and the two-way traffic. You don't have to do it right now, but if you have thoughts on it, please share it, definitely.
All right.
And then I'm going to ask David Cohen, Councilman Cohen, did you have a comment or a response?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, neither a comment nor a response. I wouldn't have even raised my hand, but you missed one of my questions in the Q&A. And I think it will help people understand the options a little better. And that was, can you talk about the width of the sidewalks on Nassau Street? Because you gave options with a 13-foot sidewalk, with an 11-foot sidewalk, with a 16-foot sidewalk. And I think those numbers don't mean much to people, but if you can tell what the sidewalks are in Nassau, they might be more meaningful and help people sort out their preferences.
I can definitely do that. I'm just on my screen opening up another document. So as part of the Nassau streetscape design, the consultant did look at sidewalk typology. And in a lot of places, we do have sidewalk that is 16 foot wide or greater. And then we also have then areas that are narrower than 16 feet wide. I don't know exactly how much narrower, but in some cases, I think we may even be up to 25 feet wide for our sidewalks. So that gives you a frame of reference for the sidewalk width.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see. I will jump next to Bainey. Oh, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Hopefully you should be able to. There you go. One more, nope, try again.
How about now?
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to ask, for those of us that do want to see certain things and, you know, public art and all of that, what's the best way for us to support getting the Historical Society to support? I mean, those were the two things that I kept hearing again, was the Historical Society and then this issue of the delay possibly coming from the need to run the study, which might take longer than we ideally would like. So I'm just wondering, for those of us that want to at least help on one side of that, we can't prevent the delay with the study. It's just not possible, and it's going to cost what it's going to cost. But what about on the other side with the Historical Society? Like, what can we as residents do to get that organization to be more flexible maybe, and see the value against the value of historical preservation? Of course, it's important, but you know, we didn't have the issues that we have now, quite frankly, so we can't always look to the old solutions. I think the world is changing and we have to build a new thing. And COVID provides challenges, but opportunities. You know, we would have never been able to run this pilot that you guys are running on Witherspoon. Never. It would have never happened. And it happened because of COVID. So I think that, you know, I'm just curious, how do we do that? Like when you mentioned public benches to me, I mean, I'd love to raise some money for some public art on the benches. You know, I used to run a gallery, so I know tons of artists that would help with that. So how do I support that initiative? I know which option I want, which I'll keep to myself for now, but it's probably not a surprise, but I want to know, what should I be doing to help? I mean, I'll send out the survey and I'll ask people to take it, but what can I do to help with that historical site, that historical group that I think is going to be an issue because they want to keep things the same?
So it's the Historic Preservation Commission, just to clarify. It's not the Historical Society of Princeton. I think just continue to voice your opinion and your support in public meetings. And we do have Michael LaPlace from our planning department is here. And we're trying to get him hopefully moved over as a panelist. He might be able to help me answer this question because historic preservation does fall under his department. So let's see if he can be brought in and answer that for you. But I mean, really, it's just continue to talk about the project and attend public meetings and voice support for these initiatives.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It's excellent.
You're welcome. And once Michael gets in, if he has some comments, we'll let him speak. Frank, you've been patient. Please feel free to jump in. You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, I won't be too long, but I want to address the issue of the C option. I believe that is the most outstanding thing I've seen in Princeton. I've been in Princeton, my family, for 46 years at the Alchemist and Barrister. And I think that if you look through the 5 proposals, I think it's 5, the only one that's clean without the exhaust from cars and the exhaust from trucks is that Scene C. And it's a green option. It's a business option. Now, you can't say that too often, but this was done so well, and it can be accomplished. I'm not a person that looks at the problems. I look at the solutions, and I will give you a much more detailed analysis of all the solutions, including the parking, including the deliveries, and concluding how you can do this, because it can be done. Deliveries, I've been dealing with since I've been in, I was an attorney in New York, and I came here the last 7 years. But my family's always been involved because I owned it since 1972. This is a great option for Princeton. It brings us into the new world. It's bicycles. It's people getting up and getting on their bicycles or walking. And deliveries can be made in the morning, and they can be made in the back of a lot of the facilities. And also the parking. Well, people don't even know the fact that the Spring Street Garage has a 30-minute free parking. So if you wanted to take a takeout, you could go there for 30 minutes and do a lot of other things to pick up your food. There's takeout. I have the option, and I've done it, where I've taken food and I've delivered it up the corner with our people. If you can't afford to pay for what you reap by way of a net profit, by taking care of your business, you shouldn't be in Princeton. As we all know, people come into Princeton with a marketing plan that fails because they don't know how to deal with their businesses. If you come into this town and you know it, and you've got great supportive money, and that's what you need, you could do a great job, and you could do a job with that green atmosphere of C. That is so clean and so appropriate. That street could be made to look magnificent. And you don't have to look at Europe. I've been to Europe. They have these places too, but this could be even better. So I'm all for it. And anything I can do to help that happen, I will do. And by way of financing or work. And that's all I have to say. And I'll give you a lot more details of every little option can be taken care of with respect to fixing all the problems concerning parking, concerning deliveries, concerning all those matters. It's all fluff until you put the solutions down. And I'm a person of solutions, not of problems. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Frank. Andrew?
You're going to have me follow up Frank Armanente? Come on.
Andrew, you know you like me, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're up for the challenge.
Thanks, Ms. Stockton. Thanks everyone on the call. Good evening. My name is Andrew Siegel. I'm a resident of Princeton. I live right in town in the business district. I grew up here as well. My family owns Hamilton Jewelers. I also have a family member who owns several properties on Witherspoon Street. And for full disclosure, I'm also a member of Princeton's Economic Development Committee and was involved in the conversations that brought about the temporary current design for Witherspoon Street that's in place today. With all that said, my comments tonight are my own and don't necessarily represent any other stakeholders other than myself, but I like to think I represent a point of view from multiple different perspectives, given my involvement as a resident, a business owner, and with knowledge of the needs of landlords in the area. So at Hamilton, we've believed in the value of a beautified Witherspoon Street for some time. In fact, we're actually redesigning the Witherspoon side of our building with a beautiful new entrance to welcome shoppers on the street. And so that should tell you how much we believe in it. So I'm really, really glad that the town is facilitating this conversation. We would support any streetscape improvements to enhance the aesthetics of the street, and would even like to see additional options considered that aren't in the packet provided by the town. You know, for example, our store in Florida is in a highly walkable destination luxury shopping area. It is a one-way traffic street design, happens to be with ample parking and ample pedestrian-friendly sidewalk areas and bike racks, and actually sidewalk extensions and jut-outs that Deanna, you were talking about earlier, for sitting and dining and traffic calming and pedestrian visibility in the crosswalks, which is really nice. It might be something to look at here if the town, the residents and the businesses have felt that the one-way solution hasn't really caused traffic flow issues, although it sounds like Jessica might have data otherwise. So there are lots of options to consider that would enhance the downtown area. I will say that one thing I am adamantly against is a full closure of Witherspoon Street to vehicular traffic. I'm not the only one who feels this way, and as you heard from Jessica and a few other merchants who might be on the call or may not be, but we've certainly spoken to. This isn't because Princeton merchants are inherently against making Princeton more friendly or walkable or green. It's actually in our best interest to make sure that everyone feels comfortable shopping and dining here. So, and really our life's work is serving the people in this town. It's why we go to work every day. But I'm against the full closure because I understand the reality of my business and the simple truths about the central business district, some of which are the following. Firstly, the majority of visitors to town drive here. Even the recent survey of Witherspoon Street visitors, although it was unscientific and was only 140 people, showed that 52% of respondents drove to town. And if 52% are driving now, what do you think it's going to be like once things start going back to normal? I can tell you that a small minority of Hamilton customers come from the 08540 zip code. We see plenty of people from Princeton, but we also see plenty of people from out of town. A vast majority of our clients require easy ingress and egress and easy parking options. Even the merchants I speak to whose numbers skew more local have mentioned the need for their majority driving clients to find easy parking. This is because, and Jessica actually touched on this, Princeton lacks the density and the transit options and the in-town critical mass of shoppers for any business to survive solely on locally derived revenue. Now, we could talk all day about if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I happen to love density, and I'm very happy with building in density into our town. But the truth is that it's not there right now. We need shoppers who walk here and bike here, but we also need shoppers who drive here in order to survive. We really need both. A blocked off pedestrian plaza that limits parking and movement of vehicular traffic might be a nice addition to a dense urban center, but would be a disaster for our business district that relies on outside visitors to survive and has only roadways to bring people here. The second truth that I want to touch on is that the makeup of the businesses on the street, not just the makeup of the people who are visiting town. That makeup of businesses and the way we do business is really sort of dependent on easy vehicle access. The street has full service restaurants where people stay for a while, alongside quick service restaurants, which rely on people being able to quickly park, run in, pick up their orders. There are also retailers like us who rely on everything from quick pickups to lengthy consultations, from walk-ins to scheduled appointments. we love it when people come in and browse on a whim, but we also recognize that many other people visit specifically from out of town. They need to get in, park, and get out. A closed Witherspoon Street would also be underutilized in the early morning. Actually, Jessica mentioned that also. This is not a coincidence that the business owners are seeing the same things. Foot traffic would be non-existent, and businesses that rely on the quick morning coffee or bagel run would lose significant revenue as clients choose to go elsewhere for convenient access. Colder months would also obviously see decreased usage when fewer people will choose to dine outdoors or stroll in the freezing weather, preferring instead convenient street parking close to their destination. That's not to mention, obviously, the operational needs, and I know Frank mentioned he has some ideas which I think would be interesting, but the truth is that not many of those businesses have back behind building access, and we're really talking multiple deliveries per day. These are not small, like one-off deliveries that you can walk up the street on a wheeled cart. Every business on that street relies on the logistics made possible by vehicular traffic. So, you know, I know I'm going over time here, but these are just a few of the main reasons why a full closure of Witherspoon would be, frankly, the death knell for local businesses at a time when we are already struggling. There are plenty more reasons that I'm sure you would hear from other local businesses. So if you're someone like I am who likes the idea of this, and thinks it's nice, but also I'm sort of know the reality of doing business in town. If you're someone who doesn't necessarily know that reality, I encourage you to talk to other business owners on the streets. I can tell you that my clients who choose to visit and shop in our beautiful town would look at this potentially as an additional barrier to entry. I would ask, finally, the town, what really are we trying to solve for? I mean, Deanna, your presentation was fantastic, but what is really the goal of the reimagination of Witherspoon? And maybe that's what these discussions are here to decide. But if it's beautification and a nicer environment, I think we can all certainly agree on the need for that. We need Witherspoon to look nicer and be better. If it's better usage of space to provide a more thoughtful layout, then let's actually be thoughtful about how we can make Witherspoon better for everyone. But you know, a shiny, idealistic version of a denser, pedestrianized Princeton with robust transit and up-to-date zoning laws may get in the way of reality. So I encourage everyone to consider a Witherspoon option that would make the street better, beautiful, and accessible to all. One that encourages people to see our beautiful town and come from both near and far. And I really hope that, that everyone takes those comments seriously when business owners say that this will be a major issue for our businesses. It's not that we don't want to change. It's not that we don't see what's happening around the world. It's just that we know the simple truths about doing business here. That doesn't change the fact that we want to serve everyone. And I just hope that we're all here as businesses to serve you all in the community in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Let me see, who is next? Heidi. I'm sorry, Heidi, before you go, I know Dorothea had her hand up. Let Dorothea have a time first.
Hi there. I'm Dorothea von Moltke. I'm a resident of Princeton and co-owner with my brother-in-law and my husband of Labyrinth Books on Nassau. Thank you, everyone, for the time that has gone into all this thinking. It's my comments have been made really easy by being preceded by Jessica and Andrew. I think everyone heard from Jessica, in no small measure, her articulate appreciation of the goals and aspirations of this project. Andrew also, and I share all of that. And it's clear that in the current iteration of Witherspoon Street, or this part of Witherspoon Street, just how much imagination and thought has gone into finding the current solution, which answers this COVID crisis. I think I just want to put an accent on the fact that we are in a state of exception, and that I think it's very risky to extrapolate from a state of exception to a new future. So while I think we have a wonderful solution for an urgent problem right now, what we don't have is a pilot for Witherspoon Street, because we are in a state of exception, in an unusual moment. And so I think that's a real challenge. It poses a real challenge also to the question of a meaningful traffic study. And taking away that main artery or making it just permanently one way, either way, that's a traffic study of the impact of that in some ways really can't be done during COVID either. So I have real questions about when can a meaningful traffic study be done? And I do think it's a precondition, not just to meet a state requirement, but to have a good solution, to have a meaningful traffic study of what would happen if you take this artery away or change it drastically. So I'm going to throw something out there that's completely unorthodox, and I don't mean to put sort of a wrench in things, but in some ways, if I listen to the timeline of the overall plan for Witherspoon Street, part of me wants to say, why don't we prioritize the rest of Witherspoon first? And which is also the historically minority neighborhoods of Witherspoon that have a lot of need, and lift them up, and all the work that has gone into this will still be there and will still be ours to draw on. And then we can do a traffic study when all the players are back in circulation who make up our neighbors, our visitors, our customers, our staff, all of that. So I really am concerned that we are planning a future from the inside of this particular moment, and want to say that I do also think that that the kinds of pedestrian areas that are we're considering forming by taking away all traffic from that segment of Witherspoon, they respond to typically and rightly so to the richness that comes from a lively, dense, and this has been said by Andrew and Jessica, dense mix of retail and restaurant, and also more residents than we have right now. We have vacancies to an extent that we've never seen, and we are more than likely, almost certain, to have more vacancies. And a lot of those are retail vacancies. So we don't have that mix. Again, we hope to get back to it. We hope to collectively have the imagination and the values to support that coming back and growing, but we don't have it right now, and it's not looking like we will have it soon. So I want mine is a voice of caution to be thinking that this is the right moment from within our experience of the really wonderful thing that's happening on Witherspoon Street right now, to think that gives us good information for what we should do in the future. I think that we are lucky in so many ways that Princeton already is an incredibly walkable town with lots of places to. Palmer Square is a fairly pedestrian zone. We have Hinds Plaza, we have all of the campus. So while we wait for a time when we can do the studies thoughtfully that have to underpin this kind of a plan, let us be comforted by the fact that our town is already very walkable. And my vote would be, let's focus on the rest of Witherspoon first, see how we can lift it up, and then return to these plans and ideas, many of which are good and rich. But I want to be clear that I too am very worried about a plan that closes Witherspoon to traffic. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dorothea. Heidi, would you like to share your comments? Thank you.
Yeah, I actually have two quick questions and one quick comment. Two quick questions. One is you talked a lot about the movement of vehicles and pedestrian safety, but I didn't actually, except for the bike racks, I didn't hear too much about bike, movement, right? So I live down at the near the bottom of Witherspoon. And, you know, when I come into town, it's very often on my bicycle. So that was just a quick question, is how are you addressing that? And I didn't hear very much about it, but I will also go and look at all the options more carefully, because it was a lot to take in. Two is the trash. Nobody talks about trash. I don't, you know, trash is just like, it's there, we have it. And, you know, as a member of the Princeton Environmental Commission, we've struggled to try and figure out, like, it's so crowded for some of the businesses, like, how do they do their trash and how do they do their recycle? And, you know, it's just like, there's not even enough room for all of that. So I didn't hear very much about trash, and I would love to hear about trash. And then, actually I have two comments, I'm sorry, but they're quick. One is that it would really, really great from the perspective of the Environmental Commission if the engineering department could evaluate the energy usage of the street, of the public street portion, right? Lights and whatever else you're doing, the holiday lights, all the stuff that you talked about that are kind of in the public way. Evaluate what it is now and what your goal would be to reduce the energy usage of the street while still, you know, maintaining a light level that's safe and, you know, all the things that we want to have, but just even just to know what the numbers are would be real interesting. And the other is the same thing kind of with water, like what's the stormwater quantity and quality right now, and what would it end up being? You know, with various, like if we did this measure or that measure, or one option or another option, so that we have like numbers, actual numbers that we're understanding, you know, very much like, you know, that's what a traffic study does, whether it's the right time to do one or not. But, you know, it gives you real numbers to try and make decisions with. And so I'm just thinking this would be good. I personally, of course, would like to see whatever light fixtures we pick not only be LED, but to be respectful of the night sky. And I know there may be some conflict with a historic looking fixture, but at my university, which is a historic property of the Vanderbilt estate, we found one, and it does everything. It's LED, it's night sky, and it's historic. So I know it's possible. And then my very last comment is kind of akin to what the last person talked about. I think that it's really important, and maybe this all works together, but I couldn't keep track of all the timelines so carefully in your presentation. I think it's really important to understand all of Witherspoon Street, no matter which part you start on first, because it is a, you know, of a piece. And I know it changes from more of our little downtown to, you know, something that's kind of a mix of business and residential, and then leads into our civic center. So it does have these various components, but of all the streets in Princeton, Witherspoon Street to me most represents our town because it has all these various components, right? Starts up at the very top where the university is, and then it has things like the library and the Arts Council, and then it has businesses, and it has smaller businesses, and it has the diversity of you know, residents in our community, and then it, you know, it has churches that are really significant to our community, and then, you know, it has that civic center kind of down at the bottom end. And so for me, I think it's so important to see it all together and not to do it too piecemeal. You know, in many ways, I do feel that the lower part, you know, of Witherspoon has languished. If you walk down the street and you see what has happened to the street trees, and they're competing with the electric lines and the cars and the parking and the, you know, and I think it's true that we're kind of trying to decide what it is that we want, and to balance all the competing functions that we either need or want on our streets. But I'm going to put in a big vote for trees. That's it.
Thank you, Heidi. Regarding bike mobility in the corridor, in reviewing the bike study, there is a provision for enhanced sharrows on Witherspoon Street, and then future investigation of bike lanes in the segment north of Paul Robeson. So in this section of Witherspoon from Nassau to Green or Paul Robeson, it remains in the master plan as enhanced sharrows. From our perspective, what we were looking at is providing more opportunities for bicyclists who are coming downtown to park their bikes and become pedestrians within this part of the corridor. So that's how we were trying to address bike traffic. With trash, we would be looking at that as part of replacing the existing bins that are on the street to be something that matches what's on the Nassau Streetscape guideline. If there's a more holistic question in general on that one, we can definitely follow up with you. It is a topic of discussion every month at the Public Works Committee meeting, and we can talk about that further. Thank you for the suggestion about evaluating the energy with the lighting and the water quantity. I'll work with T&M and Associates to see what we can do to put that information together. One good thing we're looking at is to switch over from the existing street lights that are not LED to something that is LED. So that should have a good environmental gain for us, a good environmental benefit. So, and the fact that we don't have any sort of detention on Witherspoon Street now and are looking to do green infrastructure, again, that should be an environmental benefit with this design. So I see we've got 3 more people that have joined to make comments. Joe Butler, I will call on you next. You can go ahead.
You know what, I really, that must have been a mistake. I didn't really have a comment other than I put in the Q&A, I am concerned about the safety issue and whether or not you've consulted with PFARs, with the fire, because I do think with the university, it's not just looking at the traffic up and down Witherspoon, or as you may drive it onto Wiggins and Hamilton, Paul Robeson. Witherspoon is, I think in the master plan, I put the comment that it's a major collector. We overall in our town, we lack kind of roadway infrastructure, and with the university having to get around that on both sides already, I feel like there might be a real safety problem with eliminating Witherspoon as a through street. And, you know, I'm not sure it's consistent with the master plan to eliminate it as a through street. Now that the hospital's across Route 1, we need to get over there. So I would be interested to know what the impact is from a safety perspective. I also want to second a comment. I'm in town every day. I'm on Witherspoon Street every day. I spend money on Witherspoon Street every day. And the comment has been made and underappreciated, I think, that there are different times of day. One reason the street works or worked in the pre-COVID days was that there was a lot of sharing of space from people who need it in the morning, who utilize it in the morning, midday, and then late afternoon. And I think you've tried to make, or in the evening, you've made that accommodation with the loading zones, at least trying over on Palmer Square. But that has kind of happened naturally, I think, on Witherspoon. And the other thing I'd say is, that was also referenced, is Palmer Square, the green space in Palmer Square is not very well utilized, and Hinds Plaza is, you can almost always find a seat in Hinds Plaza. So getting back to the question of what problem are we solving, I would second that question. Thanks, Deanna, though. Good presentation.
Great. Thank you, Joe. All right. Let's see. I think Hussam. And I apologize if I've mispronounced.
Let me, I guess, start the video too, so I don't have my, background. I apologize. And I don't know if my reception, I had to run to my third story to escape my 4 crazy kids. So I apologize if my reception's not good here. So I'll be short with my time. I know everybody's, it's probably a late day, long day for everybody. So, and I think a lot has been expressed. I do want to commend Princeton always for their ongoing efforts to beautify the town, and to the engineering department, and the great things you guys do on a daily basis or on an annual basis. So I represent Mamoun's Falafel. We have the restaurant on 20 Witherspoon Street, but me and my brothers also own the building itself. And I think my only concern would be the full closure of Witherspoon Street. My big concern with that is to create a full pedestrian zone, so to speak, or walkway. I just don't think Princeton has the right density yet for that type of development in the town. And I say that only because I have experience with businesses in Hoboken, Jersey City, and Manhattan in the Village. And in those areas, that's where you can see the density where it seemed like the pedestrian walkway was created because there was so much density and everybody just was packed to the gills there, that the pedestrians created a little more breathing room to allow to facilitate better business, to facilitate a better community-like environment. And I just don't think Princeton has that yet. I hope we get there someday. I just don't know if it's there yet. And that would be my concern. My concern would be, unintended consequences of moving in a direction that we're not necessarily sure of the right environment for. What is the metric we're using to do that? So that's my main concern. And I think I lived there too as well, in the apartment above the restaurant, having to work, 20 hours a day when we first opened it. And having lived there for 2 years, I did see the town itself from morning to night. And, the amount of activity in that town on Witherspoon alone, I just don't think the density is there to support. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time and thank you.
Thank you. Bainey, we'll give you a second shot at this. Nope, you're good? Okay, thank you. All right, there were quite a few questions about traffic and traffic counts. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dan McGinnis with McMahon, and maybe he can, well, maybe he will hopefully answer all the questions that were raised.
Sure. Thank you, Deanna. Yeah, I counted maybe 6 to 8, and I think I can take through them pretty quickly and respond. There was a lot of questions about the downsides of doing a traffic study, and one being the time frame. I just wanted to clarify, it's not the traffic study it's not going to take long. What could pose a problem with the schedule is obtaining an access permit from the New Jersey Department of Transportation if we shift traffic flows around. That's what could potentially be a problem with the project schedule. Now, given the spring advertisement and summer construction that's anticipated, I mean, it's possible that we could get this study done and get at least some initial comment back from DOT enough to allow things to proceed, or perhaps as part of the permit, it would be off-site intersections that required improvements because of traffic diversion, and that would still allow the project to proceed. So without looking into it further and then sort of getting with the department, it's hard to say, but I just wanted to clarify that it's not the study itself that would cause the potential schedule problem, and we'll look into that further. And then there was concern about how do you count traffic during a pandemic? Well, it's a valid concern, and the answer is you don't. You look for historical traffic counts, and then if they're hopefully they're relatively recent. There is also we've been using big data a lot. There are firms that aggregate cell phone, mobile device, navigation system data, and use that to produce pretty accurate traffic counts that have been accepted by DOT and other agencies. That would be another source. So we would typically rely on historic counts first, supplement it with big data. But that's something we'll look into and work with the municipality to address. And then the idea that the question of whether the COVID trial helps the traffic study, I mean, besides what I just said about the traffic obviously being down right now, I think it is sort of a proof of concept that does help us if that option is selected. There were questions about the signal at Robeson. Someone asked if the signal could be timed to produce a walk interval without pressing the button. It certainly can. That's something we can look into. It's called pedestrian recall. It could be set that way to operate that way at certain times of the day when there's heavy pedestrian volume. So I'll make a note. We'll look into that.
And I just want to ask a question on that one. We had this come up at the intersections of Harrison with Hamilton and Franklin, that because the ADA compliant traffic signal buttons talk, that there is concern about it talking 24 hours a day if it's on that auto recall. And so I think at Witherspoon and Wiggins, we're probably fairly safe if it does that, because we don't have the residential density right at the intersection. I just wanted to point that out, that has come up in conversations in Princeton in the past about that concern about the audible portion of those signals.
Yeah, that's a valid concern too, especially in residential areas. And there are alternatives to it if you design it in such a way you can still meet the ADA without having those verbal voice messages. So we can look into options. Someone asked about the 20-year traffic projections that we had mentioned that the DOT and their consultant were using for Nassau and Witherspoon. And I believe they mentioned they were using 1% a year. And I know there's some disagreement as to what traffic will do in the future, but I think that is still pretty common with DOT and their studies. And probably we would use a similar approach. Again, relying on pre-COVID data and adjusting it and then growing it to account for future travel, just to make sure that future growth, rather, to make sure that whatever's being designed can accommodate traffic growth in the future. I think those were the main things. There were some questions about bicycle, whether the signal could accommodate bicycle lanes along Robeson and Wiggins. I know there are sharrows now. There's been a lot of planning effort by the municipality. Maybe it's a question for you, Deanna. I mean, technically from a signal perspective, you can design the signal to accommodate whatever's ultimately coming, if it's an on-street facility. But I'm not sure what else is anticipated.
Right now, I think we're still trying to finalize that study, depending on schedules. I know we had tentatively looked at having another public meeting for the Wiggins corridor in October. It's amazing to think it's already mid-September, so we'll keep everybody updated on that, on the status of that. So I don't have an answer about bike lanes yet, but yeah, like Dan said, you can move signal heads on mast arms of traffic signals to line up with lane shifts if that's what occurs with with bike lanes. And we also have, this is a new enough signal that if you change timing and take out left turns, then that can be accommodated as well in the timing directive, right, Dan?
If we were to change the flow direction, yeah, that would be something we would look at in the study and then address with the signal.
Okay. We brought Adam Welch, our new executive director at Arts Council. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that nice little plug. I really appreciate it. So full disclosure, I am the new ED at the Arts Council, and I'm also a lecturer at Princeton University for the last 10 years. So I don't currently live in Princeton. I've been in New Jersey for about 12 years now. So I'm sort of speaking as a consumer, I would say. And another plug for Mamoons. I spent 17 years at the Greenwich Village store, shopping there all the time, and I have been to the location here in Princeton, and wonderful, wonderful job. So anyway, every time I do come to Princeton prior to working there, I always parked at the university parking lot, spending most of the time, walking downtown. And I'm wondering if, in terms of thinking about the future, and I really appreciate everyone's comments. I love hearing both sides of the argument, but a couple questions is there a possibility for what one might call automatic bollards in the street? And so it's only a weekend full closure. I'm curious if something like that could, work both ways for both the businesses, and that would also allow 100% accessibility to first responders in the case that they needed to access it, and it would still allow improvements in widening the sidewalks. Just basically any additions you make being at street grade, so you don't raise the sidewalk in the area, and that way it's not permanent. It's a flexible space in case in 5 months it's a disaster, or in 5 years it's a disaster. It can still be modified. Also too, I love the idea for, improving the pedestrian access and increasing the visibility of Princeton as a sort of a creative placemaking, a place of creative placemaking. And I think that, obviously for obvious reasons, as an artist myself, I encourage absolutely the idea of expanded public art. There's also an economic component, an increased economic component of that to local businesses. Another plug for increasing pedestrian walkway is, the sense of what's called walking wallets. You get people out of their cars to engage in walking, and you're likely to pick up more business along the way. So it's just not a 5-second dash into a store to buy something and leave, but walking past several stores. And I will tell you, I noticed the bookstore. Every time I walk by there on the way downtown, I always have to stop and look at the books and go in, even if it's not a place on my route. So I would look into that. And lastly, and this I guess is for Mr. McGinnis, is the state open to researching diagonal parking? I know that diagonal parking on on Nassau Street could increase parking spaces and also help slow down traffic. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there should be enough access to be able to accommodate that kind of parking there. And I think that could make up those 22 spaces on both sides of Nassau, particularly, and the university might hate me for saying this, is we might be able to expand a little bit more on that side of the street to accommodate a slightly wider roadway. So I think that, ultimately increased parking on Nassau to make up the difference and just creating that flex space through the bollards might cover all the grounds and might be able to fix all these, all of the concerns. And as well as, opening up the green space and just being open to all the possibilities. But I definitely like flexible opportunities. That way you don't do something that can't be reversed. Anyway, I've been going on and on. Thank you for my my time here, and good luck.
Thank you, Adam. Dan, I had the same thought about the like a partial closure of the road. That can we investigate maybe evening closures of the road and or weekends, and maybe that could go a long way to address some of the concerns about getting deliveries and the activity that occurs during the day into this space, but then acknowledging that there is a lot more pedestrian activity, say in the evening. So that's something that I would like to think about a little bit more. And then the diagonal parking, just to respond back on Adam's comment, that's definitely been in my view, especially as we were looking at with the Nassau Street, Main Street. We do have a lot of pavement on Nassau Street, and it's very car-centric, and it's an interesting thought to find ways to provide more mobility, say for bicyclists on the road, yet not impact parking spaces. So again, the challenge would be DOT. That would be a new dynamic of introducing diagonal parking. And I presume we'd be looking at like a back-in diagonal parking. That way you would exit your spot forward rather than in a reverse pattern. But it's a great idea, and I know we have had discussions with the university about moving ahead with DOT in a study of Nassau Street, and that could be a component of that. Let me see, I know we've had a lot more comments that have come in on the Q&A. And I know, so Dan addressed the comment about changing the traffic light control at Robeson, Witherspoon, so that you don't have to push the button. Let's see what else we had. Are these questions being answered tonight as part of the presentation or at a later date? So we have tried to answer questions as we've gone along, and this is being recorded. So we'll review the recording, and if there are things that we have not answered, we can put together a written response that will be housed on the municipal web page. Let's see, how many parking spaces will the new hotel bring? I cannot give you an answer on that one. I've been involved in the meetings, but I don't have the exact number, and we can have Jim Purcell follow up with the answer on that question. And for those of you who don't know, the new hotel is proposed at the corner of Chambers and Nassau Street behind Jam and Crepes. Let's see. What is being said around morning on Witherspoon Street not being utilized? Gauging the use of the street now in a pandemic is also not accurate. Okay, agree 100% with everything Jessica said. Let's see, oops, I think I skipped another question. Let me just see. And if any of you want to help me follow up. Okay, let's see. After the DE comment, okay. Also a ratio of width because Nassau is a way bigger street, period. Yes, so discussing the sidewalk width on Nassau Street, you do need to look at the comparison of the road width. Another comment on weekends when we have visitors, could we work with the university, have parking lots close to Nassau available for parking, possibly metered? Oftentimes, okay, the parking lots are probably those at 4 Mercer and behind Callaway Henderson. In the past, when the university has been in full capacity and operation, they have maximized the use of their parking lots. And so my understanding is that they utilize those parking lots 24 hours a day for the various staff members that work on campus, but we can ask that question. Agree with Elizabeth, can the town work with the churches, the Y, and the university to anticipate capacity on weekends? Definitely. Clarification that this review is referring to the Historical Commission and not the Historic Society. Correct, right? It's the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission, not the Historic Society of Princeton. Much of the capacity of bike racks is taken by employees. Can employers be encouraged to provide bike racks in any available space behind those businesses with space for employee use? There's a need to free rack space for customers. I know there is an effort in the works to establish an ordinance that will set bike parking levels for new developments or developments that have to come to planning board. So I think that would be our opportunity to work with businesses to encourage provision of employee parking, bike parking. Okay, yep. University allows free parking every weekday after 5 p.m. and all day on the weekends, but that is also to specific parking lots. We do have a parking map on our website, and that indicates which parking lots on the university campus are available to the public. So just check that. Reversing south to lane will have a problem with pedestrian visibility, but also a vehicle visibility problem right after the sidewalk. Yes, I hear you on that, Michael. And that would be one thing we need, a couple of things to look at. Better signage to find university parking on the weekends would help visitors. Which lot are we losing that Jess mentioned? That is Griggs Corner on the corner of Whole Fish and Witherspoon Street. There is a proposal to develop that with a 3-story building. I think it's coming up at planning board this month. Also, Dan, thank you for saying yes. Okay. Also, who can quickly park on Witherspoon Street now? I haven't parallel parked on Witherspoon easily since 2007. I think the only people who need quick in and out is the bank. Palmer Square has one way. What are their vacancy rates? Good point, but they have money now that's not guaranteed later. This is related to Dortea's question about focusing on a different section of the roadway. And we would have to talk to DOT, but my sense is that we cannot change the section of Witherspoon Street that the funds are allocated to at this point. All right, let's see. Okay, that is a good point about so many vacancies right now, especially when thinking about what happens next. Recent ones, Kitchen Capers, Homestead, they didn't close. They relocated down to 300 Witherspoon Street. Tandoori Bite, Eclair Cafe, the Green Item Store, and several others on the main street easily. Feeling a desire to understand so much more about our town and what's happening on Witherspoon Street. Good point. If y'all tear up the street, can we put the electric lines underground? That is something that I am investigating on Witherspoon Street with PSE&G. It is a very costly undertaking. PSE&G does not pay the cost of that. They put it on the benefited properties, which in the past when we've looked at it, we looked at it most recently with Bank Street. The cost to put the electrical and telecommunications lines underground is in the millions of dollars. But we are looking with this section of roadway, because the undergrounding starts at the Arts Council. We're looking to see if there's an opportunity to at least put the last 2 utility poles underground. So that would get us just north of Green Street, and then try to find other opportunities to fund putting more of Witherspoon Street underground. So we are looking at it. It's just costly. If nothing else, we are looking to have PSE&G beautify or replace the existing poles because they are substandard, at least aesthetically. What's the difference between sharrows and enhanced sharrows? In our bike mobility plan, it shows the difference. And essentially what the difference is that an enhanced sharrow has a green background. And whereas a regular sharrow is the bike symbol with 2 chevrons in white on just plain pavement, the enhanced sharrow adds the green background to further highlight the position of a bicyclist on the roadway. Let's see. I'm hearing that many merchants are concerned about loss of business because customers can't park on Witherspoon, but there are so few spots there anyway, so it must be about something else. Sounds like our town needs a bold overhaul of the parking transit plan in tandem with this redevelopment. Please let's not sink a great idea, option C, because we can't think creatively about parking. And let's see, how would the public space be allocated, rented? Who would be responsible for the additional trash created by outdoor dining, general cleanliness, sidewalk cleaning? So we currently have sidewalk cafe license requirements, and I would look to utilize that going forward if we are enhancing the pedestrian space. And then the additional trash created should be dealt with by the businesses and general plan. Okay, so several people have mentioned the functional classification of Witherspoon Street as a collector. That classification does not consider the land use in combination with the street, only the role as it pertains to vehicles. Modern classifications such as NJDOT's Smart Transportation Guidebook or NACDO's Urban Street Design Guide have a taxonomy of street types that also include land use. Yes, agreed on that comment. Also in beginning discussions with Michael Laplace in the planning department to relook at the way we classify our roadways in the master plan. You're correct, everything is based on a vehicle classification rather than looking at land use. And as you state, the more modern way to look at our roadways is how it functions in relation to the land use. So that's definitely on our staff list as an action item in the next year or two. And we'll be working closely with the planning department and the planning board on that item. So thank you for bearing with me and listening to my voice all this time. We have a lot of questions I can see that we should follow up on and give some more answers to you. I do encourage you to go to these both the survey that we have for the different alternatives and to provide additional written comments to us using engineering@princetonnj.gov. We appreciate all of the feedback that we've received from the community, and please keep an eye on our municipal website at princetonnj.gov, because we will be posting additional information to the website as we get it prepared. And we should also be able to put a copy of this recording up on the website as well for anybody that missed it or would like to check on comments that were made. Tejal, staff, Kyle, anything else to wrap up tonight?
I'm just going to say that we have taken notes of certain things that stood out, especially that had to relate with the roadway geometry and the pedestrians and bikes and stuff like that. And I think we're going to take a look at every possibility to make, that central business district / historic district much better for Princeton. We're going to try our very best, and we're going to use McMahon, to do the traffic study. And that is the key here. I'm going to add that to what Dan said about the access permit. Yes, it does take time, but I guess currently we have a pilot that we have established. So I think there is already an into NJDOT. They're already working at the intersection of Witherspoon and Nassau. So I think they have our attention. Hopefully we will be able to expedite this much better than we usually do with access permits through NJDOT. And my other thing was regarding the classification of the roadway, there was a comment. Now, if it were just a municipal roadway bordering municipal roads, it would be a different issue. This is a municipal road that is intersecting a state route. So there are certain classifications that they use, which we kind of have to use. It is going to be a collector, unfortunately. And but we can look into that. I think McMahon can look into that too. That would actually help us, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the traffic analysis also. Am I right, Dan?
We can take a look at it. It's sort of a traffic and a planning function, but yeah, we can certainly take a look.
Yeah. All right, that's about it. We have a lot of notes. I know Kyle's been taking notes. So there were certain questions that need a response, and we'll be sending it to you, Deanna, so that it could be distributed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I think it's now 9:20. So thank you everybody for participating. We still have 43 attendees. We appreciate you staying with us through this entire process. Please contact us by email, engineering@princetonnj.gov, if you have questions, comments, additional, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you very much, everyone.